Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, we definitely talk about sports from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sport. That basically works both for Twitter and Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. Yes, from the world of PCB. Yes, PCB is actually looking into the independent panel that would look into the PSL bubble fiasco. And yes, New Zealand versus Australia T20 comes to a conclusion when New Zealand actually beats Australia by 7 wickets and took the series 3-2 on Sunday. Manchester United ended up winning against Manchester City 2-0. We surely talk about that. Yes, from the world of golf, Bryson DeChambeau actually managed to win one-shot victory at Bay Hill. We'll surely talk about that. Yes, from the world of NBA, Gianni Antetokounmpo actually managed to name MVP after perfect shooting 16-16 for Team LeBron. And yes, those were the headlines, and as discussed, it's still a very tricky situation with regards to how PCB has now decided to make an independent panel to look into the situation, the entire fiasco that actually took the Pakistan Super League down. There was definitely the COVID-19 situation that was already there. Not to forget that initially we had the PCB even allowed 20% attendance to a point, and then instantaneously jumping it up to a 50% attendance, which was surely the risk part. But the question is, who is to be blamed? They'll surely be looking into the details, how exactly that entire COVID-19 situation was not taken to that level that, there was a breach. They'll surely look into the breach. And to discuss more about this entire situation, we have Adam Bellis all the way from New Zealand. Adam, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So, Adam, we'll talk initially about the situation, which somehow or the other, it's not only Pakistan in which this happened, but definitely it did happen. It is now at a point that, we are investigating the entire breaches that took place with regards to the bio bubble. So we'll surely start talking about that. How do you see instantaneously a series that was on, which supposed to, there were about 16 more matches to go, but we had to put it at a halt because obviously a lot of players, like literally 7 players that we've been told, and one of the staff members were COVID positive.
Yeah, look, it's an awful situation because we know the PSL last year went through the same situation where they had to postpone it and play the rest of the tournament late last year in 2020, and to see this happen again is really disappointing for the competition. I guess having a look at the way sporting bodies manage COVID-19 at the moment, they've got to ensure that players are highly regulated, and that these kind of situations where players leaving the bubble don't occur, because as we've seen, there were 7 cases of coronavirus recorded from the players in the PSL. Just read that a non-playing member of one of the squads breached the restrictions and left the bubble. Right. And this is what happens. They've had to basically call off the tournament, which is unfortunate, because it was a great start to the PSL, some great exciting cricket, some big names in the tournament.
Right.
But look, it's a tough situation for everybody involved. You've got players that are going from country to country, playing T20 cricket and having to be in bubbles, and it must be tough on them, and also just on administrators as well, because every country has different procedures and regulations when it comes to testing COVID-19 and also quarantine periods.
Even if we look into, like you said, that all the cricket bodies are surely having their tough time, but not only them. If we talk about the bio bubble itself, we had a different bio bubble situation in Pakistan as compared to maybe if we talk about bio bubble in Australia. How do you see the bio bubble affecting us in a different manner, for the fact that we still would allow players to sit, have their meals together, but not letting them interacting with an external individual? On the contrary, Australia has, or New Zealand has, some really, really hard and fast rules with regards to the bio bubble.
Yeah, look, I personally think that the strict bio bubble is the way to go. I mean, I think when you're trying to hold these events that have a lot of players involved, you've got to make sure that the players' safety and also the public safety is at utmost importance. And I think the way New Zealand has done it, for example, by having the 14-day quarantine and keeping the players in the bubble, really ensures the safety of the players, and also ensures that at least if anything happens or any interaction with the public, that there's no risk of transmission to the playing group. Because once one of the players get it, then other players can contract it and then support self and so on. So, look, I think you've got to have a real, strict procedures in place, I think, with something like COVID-19 at this stage. And, Australia also had, a few issues. Some of the Indian boys went out for dinner, and I know that they were in a situation where they were only just interacting with their players, and that they were in a restaurant. I think it was in Melbourne. Right. But here it is a little bit different. I think it's like all country specific. I think New Zealand's been lucky in terms of the lower numbers, but right. I think in terms of the sporting codes here, especially with international teams touring this, I think there's a strong, I guess, focus on ensuring the safety and health of the players by giving them that 14-day quarantine period, and also just ensuring that that they are in a position where we're not in risk of transmission. We've just seen with the Australian series, New Zealand versus Australia, right. That a few days ago that there were restrictions placed, and it's throughout the whole country. But I think we've been lucky here in New Zealand that we've been able to have sports per all. But I know overseas, different countries have got different levels of COVID-19 going on.
Right. Even in New Zealand recently, there was a slight bit of a COVID-19 outbreak, due to which that was in Auckland, and that is why it was kind of forced to follow the entire matches in Wellington, if I'm wrong.
That's correct. So basically, what happened there was a slight outbreak in Auckland, a community case that happened. Basically, what that meant is that the New Zealand government went into level 3. Which meant that people in Auckland City had to stay at home. They couldn't go to work. Right. The rest of the country were able to operate in a limited manner. But what that also meant is that gatherings over 100 people were restricted. Thus, for the last two T20 matches, or the third and fourth T20 matches, New Zealand versus Australia, were shifted to Wellington. Also, there were no crowds in those matches. There was a crowd for the fifth T20 match in Wellington once those restrictions were lifted.
Right. We just got to know about the fact that PCB's medical chief actually handed his resignation to the chairman, but even then, his resignation is still not accepted. But the point is, the official statement that states that he will still look into the entire matter, because there is a 2-member team that have actually flown in from 2 expert hospitals of Pakistan. But the point is, why coming to this situation? I understand we still want the sport to come out. We want teams to come to Pakistan and have an interesting journey, not only for us, the cricket bodies, the country itself. Obviously, a lot of economies involved, a lot of, and yet again, 2020 kind of shut down everything for us. But right now, coming to a point that there was this minute bio break bubble, that someone had this one thing, when someone actually managed to get into bringing corona to the players, putting everything at risk. Do you think his resignation is still not accepted, but do you think this is the way out?
I don't. Look. I think there's got to be like a further investigation to be made before any heads can roll. Right. Obviously, when you're planning a big event, there's always going to be issues. There's always going to be things that arise that can be uncontrollable. So, like, I think after this postponement of this tournament this time around, I think the Pakistan cricket have really got to have a good look into seeing how the bio-bubbles are regulated, the security involved, and realistically also how long can these players stay in this bubble. Try to make sure that everything is looked at into further. Look at how players even interact with the public, how they interact with each other, and just ensure that the health and safety of the players are not compromised going forward. Because, you know, as we said, there's been an outbreak in the tournament, and they've had to postpone the tournament, which I'm sure Pakistan cricket are shattered about, because it was going to shape up to be a fantastic end to the tournament. We know that the PSL has moved back to Pakistan.
Right.
The first edition had some great fans. So, look, this is just an unfortunate event to happen. But
right.
I think at this stage, I think it's more investigations have got to be made before any really heads roll.
Right. Let's hope this whole situation comes to a halt, and, you know, it kind of becomes clear to us. Anyways, we'll move into your world of cricket. We'll talk more about Australia versus New Zealand. Yes, New Zealand actually managed to win the last match by 7 wickets and 27 balls were left. So we'll talk about that. They obviously won the series as well, 3-2. So how do you see the victory? Let's talk about the last match to begin with.
Yeah, look, it was a good victory by the Black Caps. Look, Australia had won the third and fourth T20 match. They took the match to a decider, and obviously with any deciders, there's a lot of pressure. The Black Caps started the first 2 matches in great style and put some big totals on the board, but then just the third and fourth matches, their batting just didn't quite click. And I thought there was probably a chance for Australia to nab that game and come out with a 3-2 series victory. But
right.
Again, the Black Caps bowlers bowled superbly. Ish Sodhi, again, amongst the wickets. Martin Guptill, who struggled before the series in T20 cricket, came alive again, smashing 79.
Right.
So he was a key component for the Black Caps in that fifth and final T20. Look, it was a great victory. Look, some might say that it was a second string Australian side without some of their key players, but there were some quality players in that side, and it was great to see actually Aaron Finch, who, again, a little bit like Martin Guptill, struggled of late, to have come into the series and really gain some form. So, look, it's a confidence-building win for the New Zealand side. They actually left out Cole Jamieson, making huge waves in the international scene, one of the highest paid players in the IPL auction. He was left out for the game, and that was a big call to leave a guy of that quality out. He really struggled in the series
right.
Up to that point. So I think it was a big call. And the batting clicked with Martin Guptill. Look, there's still a few concerns in the top 6 at the moment. Tim Seifert struggled. Kane Williamson wasn't at his usual best. Right. But Devon Conway again performed with the bat. And then Trent Boult, Tim Southee as well. So much positives to take out against an Australian side that still has some quality players, albeit without some of their best T20 players.
Right. We'll talk more about this entire T20 series that actually took place in New Zealand once we back from the break. So we'll surely be discussing the entire perspective. See you guys after the break. And welcome back. Yes, before the break we were surely talking about, the initial part was discussing more about the PSL and the investigations that still plan on the way. We still have Adam Bell with us, and we were talking about New Zealand versus Australia. T20, obviously they had 5 matches. The last one was actually won by New Zealand, and that made them win. They have the victory 3-2. Anyways, Adam, tell me about the initial performance. Obviously, let's talk about numbers. Like we were discussing earlier, Australia's batting line did not come to the point of proving themselves that, New Zealand still has amazing bowlers, as discussed. But where exactly do you think? Because they were tied before 2-2, but now obviously New Zealand managed to win. So how do you see where exactly was the fault? Because looking at the total of 142 for T20 is really low.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you consider that Aaron Finch got a majority of those runs, like a lot of the matches in the series, the Australian batting lineup just didn't quite click. And you actually look at the series averages.
Right.
Aaron Finch was on top, and they had some contributions throughout the series from Marcus Stoinis and Glenn Maxwell, and Josh Phillippe. But apart from that, they really just didn't click as a unit. Matt Wade at the top of the order really struggled in the series. So I think just throughout the whole series, Australia just could not quite kick onto those big totals apart from a couple of matches. And I think this would be a bit of a concern for them. In that final match, it's a slower deck. I think they really struggled on a wearing pitch against New Zealand's spin attack of Ish Sodhi and Mitchell Santner.
Right. I still remember one of the T20 matches, if I recall, the numbers were above even 200, but then New Zealand actually managed to win. So, talking about the home soil situation, let's talk about how, for instance, if New Zealand were touring Australia, would the figures, would the numbers be the same? Sometimes, when you're traveling to the other country, you surely have that home soil edge. So if we had swapped places, that Australia had to fly over to New Zealand to have the series, how would it impact both the teams?
Yeah, look, I think Australia are obviously more comfortable on their home deck, like every country. New Zealand's got a great home record lately in all formats, and as I mentioned earlier, that the Australian side are missing some key players, guys like David Warner, Mitchell Starc, and Pat Cummins, and you add those kind of guys into the mix. Obviously, it's a stronger Australian side. Look, I think the Australian side, especially with their attack that they've got a lot of fast bowlers. Meredith looked a great prospect, bowling 145 Ks, and a couple of other guys that are bowling with some great pace, Jai Richardson, Kane Richardson. So I think just on those pitches where it's a bit more bounce and pace, I think their attack really thrives in their own conditions.
Right.
And it's quite interesting that the New Zealand spin duo performed so well at home. However, it'd be interesting to see how these two bowlers would go over in Australia. Ish Sodhi a few seasons ago played for the Adelaide Strikers in the BBL and was fantastic in that tournament and got some big scalps in that tournament and some big bags of wickets. So he's no stranger to playing in Australia, and a lot of our boys now have had a bit of a taste of BBL at some stage. So look, I think that though playing in Australia is always daunting,
right.
Especially in front of the hostile crowds. Look, I think a lot of our guys now have got experience. A bowler that didn't play a game in the series, Adam Milne, he actually was recently playing for the Sydney Thunder and had an impressive BBL. So we've got a lot of guys that have got experience over there. So look, I think Australia obviously on the bouncy tracks, their bowlers thrive more. I think that they probably feel more comfortable here rather than our pitches, which are slightly slower in nature.
Right. For instance, as we were discussing earlier as well, Australia's, let's talk about even New Zealand's upcoming tour that we were discussing. So how exactly and when exactly is it planned? And just to have a clearer idea.
Well, New Zealand has 2 test matches against England in June. In July is the World Test Championship. So it's going to be a great series. Look, New Zealand hasn't toured England since 2015. And on that occasion, it was 1-1 in the test series. So I think it's a big opportunity for New Zealand to get out of New Zealand and actually play some matches away. Look, there's been a bit of a criticism about the New Zealand side, or I guess a thought that this New Zealand side over the last few years just hasn't played enough away matches. The last away test series they played was against Australia, and they were beaten 3-0 comfortably over there. Obviously, of late, New Zealand's dominated at home. Someone like Kyle Jamieson, who started his test career a year or so ago, he's got like 40 odd wickets at an average of in the teens in test cricket. So he's had a great start, but he hasn't played an away test yet. So I think England's going to be a massive opportunity for some of our guys to prove how they can perform away from home.
Right, that's going to be really interesting for the fact that we all know the COVID-19 situation is still out there, and that definitely does affect players. If we look back into De Kock's situation when he came to Pakistan, and he was unable to perform to the level, so it's really, really going to be tricky. But with regards to the protocols that New Zealand and Australia have, I think they'd be pretty much okay because they're trying to get used to the entire situation of this bio bubble thing.
Yeah, look. That'll be interesting, because basically sport within New Zealand has been normal. It's been a situation where there's been crowds, albeit the last or the third and fourth T20 matches against Australia.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how our players handle having to go through a quarantine situation in another country before obviously playing a Test series. Look, some of the New Zealand players did play in the IPL in October and had to come back in quarantine for a 14-day period. But look, it's a bit of a different situation, isn't it? Now the shoe's on the other foot. They're going to have to handle obviously being away in other countries. And I'm not sure at this stage how much preparation these guys will have before playing the Test series against England. The IPL is on in April. From my understanding, some of the players may miss some of those matches. So It might be an understrength New Zealand squad. It might even be an understrength English squad, basically because of the timing of the series.
Right. And the most, besides the fact we talk about touring, even Pakistan have this accepted this Proteas invitation as well, which is surely going to be more tricky now because of the pressure that, as discussed earlier with PCB and the COVID-19 situation. How do you see the impact of this PSL thing on to the whole situation for Pakistan cricket team touring the South Africans?
Yeah. Look, South Africa have had a lot of problems with COVID-19 as well. I mean, we've got to remember that the English side, they cancelled the one-day part of their tour late last year. The Australian sides also pulled out of a tour to South Africa. So look, I think world cricket at the moment is in flux a little bit with what to do with COVID-19. Obviously, the health and safety of the players has to be important, and that must be the focus on administrators. Look, I'm not sure when the Pakistan tour to South Africa is scheduled, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of investigations before the tour goes ahead.
Right. Anyways, thank you very much, Adam, for being with us on the show and discussing the entire perspective of cricket. We'll surely talk to you again. So that was Adam, and yes, we discussed pretty much the updates on the world of cricket, and as discussed, it would surely be affecting a lot of people. It is affecting not only PCB right now because of the fact that PSL got halted. It is also affecting the players as well. They're going through the bio bubble situation. So the COVID-19 protocol and the situation is something that we all are looking into and trying to make a solution for it. We look into the question, which is how can we come up to have those protocols that can actually keep the players safe, keep the game safe, and keep it running. But anyways, that was from the world of cricket. We'll switch over to the world of Premier League. Major update. Yes, Manchester United managed to beat Manchester City 2-0. And the interesting part was that they were having Manchester City, yes, they are on the top of the charts. However, they were managed to their 25th, 21st consecutive victory, and this would have been their 22nd consecutive victory. However, Manchester United managed to win against them, which is surely a happy moment for them, because when we look at the standings, they still are on the top of the charts. But Manchester United actually managed to score at the very start of the game, which surely will definitely bring the morale down. Not to forget that Manchester City has not had a single change for the past 19 games. But anyways, this was a major update and with regards to football in the Premier League. Anyways, we'll switch over to the next news, which is from the world of golf. Yes, Arnold Palmer invitation. Yes, so basically Bryson DeChambeau actually claimed a very, very narrow victory with regards to this, and it was a super interesting tournament for him. But yes, basically he managed to win against Lee Westwood with a one-shot victory. It was a pretty much close call for them in the world of golf. And now I will switch over to the last and the most interesting news, which we've been discussing earlier. Yes, NBA. Talking about the NBA All-Star, Team LeBron actually managed to win over Team Durrant, which was 170-150. And the most interesting thing that really happened was the race to MVP. So Giannis Antetokounmpo actually managed to win by 35 points, and not to forget that he did not miss a single shot, which is 16 for 16 shooting nights for Team LeBron. So I guess this was one of the games that everybody was looking forward for, and the MVP is out there as well. So I think we're pretty much done with the news. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports, and we can surely discuss more on what to discuss and what not to discuss. Till then, take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.